laughter still echoes in his memory. The warmth of her touch trickles away. The deepest sorrow of the Estolian Way. Horizon will claim the couple this day.
When Kaylee and Jeremiah began transcribing the inscritos of Estolians, I was fascinated by the opportunity to trace the many seemingly unrelated references to the spirit grove found in those earliest records. Time and again, they described how Estolian women gathered deep within the spirit grove to commune with deity. As I sifted through these accounts, it always felt as if I was missing some hidden connection. When I prayed directly to deity for clarity, I found my interest in the question faded almost at once. It was only later in my life that I realized deity's answer was more about the information we Estolians were not ready to receive and less about the stories themselves. Meredith Palmer Zakarian, Estolian Religious Beliefs.
Nemski. Xavier muttered under his breath in Swahili, a habit picked up in his college years, meant for moments just like this. He knew, with the strength of his former calling, that sorrow was going to visit the palace. Deity knew that any society granted only peace, happiness, and a lack of conflict was a society bound to stagnate and die. The number of tragic births was far lower here than in other countries, but they still happened. He did not wish for Bethany or Gregory to know how upset he was. Bethany had been deeply happy since coming to Estolia. For whatever reason, Theo felt, and Xavier agreed, that for her, happiness was inextricably bound to motherhood. The squall of an infant fractured Xavier's dark musings. Jessica, the midwife, placed the perfect baby boy in her patient's arms. Bethany smiled down, her gaze soft as she whispered,
Gregorio, Mortimer.
She looked up at Gregory, and in her face bloomed a joy so unmistakable that even the most stoic Estolian would have been moved. If happiness could be distilled, made pure and sharp, it still couldn't touch the brightness radiating from Bethany.
Gregory,
she breathed.
He's absolutely perfect.
Gregory and Bethany, bound forever.
Gregory sat on the bed, focused only on his wife and newborn as Jessica worked around them. He noticed how quickly she moved, and the blood slicked up to her elbows, sending a cold shock through him. Jessica caught his eye. He understood immediately.
I've sent for Samuel,
she said, voice tight. Her gaze shimmered with tears and a steady, heartbreaking certainty.
Darling?
Bethany said, drawing his focus back to her.
What is it?
Her voice sounded thin, edged with exhaustion.
Bethany, you are my life, the center of my universe, my everything.
Sorrow colored his words, and he saw recognition flicker in her tired eyes. She was pale, almost ghostly. She glanced at Jessica, seeing the truth reflected there, then turned to Gregory.
Will you hate him for taking me away?
She whispered. He swallowed hard against the ache in his throat.
No, my beautiful, extraordinary Kaylee, my heart, my soul. Gregorio will be loved and cherished every single day of his life.
He promised, voice raw. He did not say aloud that it would likely be Theo and Georgiana giving that love, not him.
I would rather...
She paused, shutting her eyes for a long moment. He feared she might not open them again. When she did, the strength of her soul shone through, a familiar, steady presence that had defined his days.
I would rather have 9 months married to you, Gregory, than 100 years without you. What woman, having known the happiness that walked with me every moment I've been in Estolia, would trade even 1 second of that away?
Jessica's voice was quiet, nearly lost in the hush of the room.
I need to clean the babe up.
Bethany gazed down at her son, his silver blonde hair no more than a shimmer, and smiled, pressing a kiss to his brow.
Always remember, Gregorio, how deeply you were loved.
Once her arms were empty, she turned her gaze to him, her heart luminous in her eyes.
I love you, Gregory Zakarian,
she whispered. Happiness and sorrow wound tightly together. Her hand traced his cheek in a feather-light caress, then slid limp to her side. He sensed she was gathering herself to say more, but all that lingered was the expectancy in the breath she never drew, the words left suspended between them. Gregory felt the most profound pain slice through him. He, like all Estolians, knew that no man could live without his soul. What he did not realize was how painful it would be to lose his Kaylee, the piece of himself now gone. He lay on his side next to her, gathering her close to his body, feeling her warmth, and yet realizing that for the first time ever in their marriage, her touch did not reassure, did not eliminate the loneliness. He wished to die. Gregorio would be cared for by his family. The only place he wished to be, the only place he belonged, was with his beloved Bethany.
Gregory.
Xavier said his name softly.
I am sorry, deeply sorry for your loss.
He gripped Gregory's shoulder and squeezed tightly.
Why? Why did Deity do it?
He asked. He gathered Bethany closer, as if the dwindling warmth of her body was the only life left within his own.
You knew she was right for you. Deity had two choices. Bethany was not like her friend Melanie, accepting barrenness with equanimity. She would have been filled with sorrow all the days of her life to be unable to provide you with a child. To her, having a child was deeply important. Deity knew that Bethany would have more happiness in 9 months with you than many people experience over a lifetime. Perhaps this is why you had so much time with her prior to gifting her your soul. I am sorry, Gregory. Realize that the only choice Deity had was to give her blissful happiness and a short life, rather than unhappiness all the days of a long barren life.
Xavier watched the pain slicing through his nephew's features and wished he did not have to accept the consequences of the Estolian way. Every Estolian man knew that marriage was eternal, the consequences immutable. If his wife went before his time, death could and would bring a man down to the grave swiftly. Xavier reflected on the limited number of times that he was witness to an early death of a man's Kaylee. The elderly generally wrapped up their affairs. If the wife went before the husband, then the husband would take the time to meet with his sons and daughters, and with their children, and overall, he would say goodbye before quietly falling into that dream state wherein he would rejoin his Kaylee and shed the burden of a life lived too long. For Gregory, there was no clear-cut closure he could look back on. 1 minute she was there, and the next she was gone. The anguish that was coming from Gregory was palpable. Here was a man who would die of a broken heart long before the lack of his soul brought him to the grave. It would be unremarkable to find him passed away before the morning, his wife still cradled in his arms.
The keeper of his soul through Estolia.